All right, well, hello, everybody. Appreciate you making the time here. Thanks to 500 for having us be here. We're very excited to have been sponsors of this. I've known Dave a long time, and it's been wonderful to watch the success that the fund has had. So I want to talk to everyone in this audience about a real phenomenon we think affects you regardless if you're an LP, a GP, or a CEO, and that's how the whole seed ecosystem has emerged, and it's no longer a singleton round that people are doing, but it's a continuous process. I'll tell you a little bit about what this means for you. There was a great article that I was fortunate enough to be interviewed in that was in Wired. I would really encourage you to read this article if you haven't. It is a 42-page article about what it's really like to be in a startup. And when Gideon, the guy who wrote the article, called me, he said, my editor at Wired is sick and tired of reading all these articles about this kid who became a billionaire and like it's so easy. So wouldn't it be cool if we wrote an article about two guys who were out there trying to raise money and it was going real bad for them? And it's actually a fascinating article because he got the tone right and he interviewed the right people on both sides of it. And it really made us think, we're like, look, this journey that the CEO goes on is so different now than prior, say pre-2008. And I think we need to spend a little bit of time talking about what that means for all of you. OK, so you've seen slides like this 100 times. I was so excited that Mark Suster had one of our slides in his deck, so we pay back the favor here. His slide shows that the cost of startups dropped. But the thing about this slide that most people fail to mention is it's not just the cost of actually the technology. It's the cost of the infrastructure for starting the company, the legal and the accounting. And one of the key instruments that got created was the capped convert note from Y Combinator. And the importance of that financial instrument in actually changing this process is as significant as the lower costs of actually the physical technologies to be able to produce the companies. Okay. So there's a really awesome history of this in the US economy. It's the history of financial innovation, well, flim flam, right? And this is every great bubble is always created as the result of some new financial innovation. Some of you have lived through some of these. The 70s, right? You had the conglomerates, and they finally got broken up. We know the 90s with the dot-com eyeballs. And anybody remember those subprime CDOs and what happened? Eventually, that popped. So our analogy to the current world is that the capped convert note is going to lead to this very, very different process of how entrepreneurs raise money in a continuous process as opposed to in one single round, because the financial, regulatory, and legal costs are so much lower that the good CEOs essentially can game the system each step of the way. OK, so what's so cool about the cap convert note? It's simple, it's cheap, and it's fast. It can be stacked without changing the fundamental terms, new note, different number. It doesn't need to reprice the employee options because it's a debt instrument. And it has some very interesting, to some extent, political aspects, too. It socializes the downside, but it privatizes the upside. And that's really where you get into the, at some point, maybe this will go poof, because that's the history of such financial innovations in US history. So the simplicity and cost effectiveness made seed become, OK, I'm the CEO. I'm going to go raise $500,000 in a note right now at a 3 cap. I'm going to go get another $500,000 at a 6 cap. Oh, I'm going to do a price round of $1 million, and I'm going to go top it up with another $1 million at a 10 cap. You could do all that over a course of 9 months. And you've now cobbled together a Series A of $4 million in 4 separate closes. But the real laugh of the matter is you called those rounds AA, ZZ. So when Andreessen Horowitz came in, they could call it the Series A, even though it was the 4th institutional close. And so the letters that get reported on in this are almost irrelevant. And when anyone tells you they're doing a Series A, just ask them, how many closes did you do before your Series A? Oh, I did 6 of them. So doesn't that mean this is your Series G? Oh, no. Those were it was a note, and oh, it was first round, and oh, it was floodgate, and we did it as a, literally, we have cap tables where the round letters make absolutely no sense. We're in one company where we are the 7th institutional close when we entered the round, and that CEO is insisting that the 8th institutional close, which he's out doing right now, will be a Series A. So that's the implication. But I'm not criticizing him. I'm making fun of the way he's gaming the system to some extent, but he's played the game masterfully. He's been able to raise a tremendous amount of money while actually minimizing his dilution at every step of the way by hitting a milestone each time he's basically going out and getting a couple more bucks. This is really awesome if you're cognizant of the process, whether you're on the GP side of it or on the LP side. And you go, well, how does this help the GPs? Aren't they the greater fools at the auction? No, they're getting more and more de-risked deals that they can pile larger and larger dollar amounts in on the backside. And so this actually helps everybody out, as somewhat counterintuitive as it is. OK, so here's the best data we were able to come up with. And James, who was recent, by the way, James Conlon was recently promoted to partner this week in our firm. He's sitting right there. So congratulations to James after being with us for 2 years. He's been doing a tremendous job not only growing our LA practice of the firm, but actually really finding analytic data to support what we're seeing anecdotally. And our accumulation of this is that we basically see 3 distinct phases to seed. Seed, right? Seed used to be 1 round. We see 3 distinct phases of it right now. The pre-seed, which tends to be incubators, Y Combinator, friends and family, Kickstarter. Then you've got institutional seed. This, again, is your floodgates, your trues, your first rounds. And you're now seeing an emerging group of people that we call post-seed financiers. And there's a couple guys in this. There's us, Venture 51, the new Crystal City Fund, Ronnie Conway's new Fund A Capital, Paul Lee over at Lightbank's doing more of this as well. So we call this post-seed, and I think over the next year you're going to hear a lot more about funds that specialize in post-seed, because it is a unique aspect, because it's basically the last part of a now tranched A round. Take a look. Friends and family, $250,000 in CUME. The institutional seed, about $2 million in CUME. And then the top-off round, to some extent, the post-seed seed extension, gets you up to $5 million. Well, that's what a Series A used to be. It was $5 million-ish, but now it's done over, say, an 18-month process, so that if you play the game right, you go and get your greater than $10 million supersized A. And yes, it's called an A, which is the running joke. OK, so we also spent a lot of time talking about what does this mean if you're raising money and you're caught in the crunch. People talked a lot about, well, there's a Series A crunch, which means that there's going to be all these companies that raise seed money and not enough able to get to the milestones to go raise their full Series A. Well, it turns out that the problem solved itself because more and more funds just raised incrementally more Series A, pre-Series A top-off funds before they went to the Series A. So you have a company that you think after 1 round of seed is ready to go to its Series A. Well, they can come to a place like a Bullpen or a Ven 51 and get 9 to 12 more months before they will get their A. And so you look in terms of the number of A rounds that have happened. It's been flatlining for almost 3 years. But the number of seed fundings has actually gone exponential, which is not surprising given that the number of institutional seed funds went from 20-ish to about 150-ish over the same period of time. So if you then time sequence it out one year later, meaning a company that's raised seed now needs to go raise its A year later, you see how big the gap is. But Jamie Davidson over at Redpoint was able to give us this information that was really interesting, which was, notice how the gap was super pronounced here, literally a flat curve up against this curve. But when you actually look at the data that was provided from Redpoint, it ended up getting smooth. And what we had to do, which was the hardest part of this data analysis, we had to tease out of the data a company that had 7 closes, including 6 stacked notes. The problem is the data sources don't report those sub-intermediate rounds the right way. So we had to actually go interview CEOs and get the finance histories of the companies to figure out what's really going on is that this is getting smoothed out because there wasn't 1 seed round. There were 7 seed rounds before they went and they got the A. And this is really, really a phenomenon that I think we're going to see a tremendous amount more about. Next part, very interesting implication. You heard in the morning about how the mega funds take all the dollars of the raises. Only 6, even though us young micro VC funds are the preponderance of the funds, the top big 10, 20 funds take 94% of all the dollars, and we end up with 6% of the dollars. We're seeing the same kind of phenomenon, but not as pronounced, happen between the seed and the post-seed world. We estimate that 2/3 of all of the dollars that are going into seed-stage companies are not in the first institutional close. And again, this is very difficult data to come by because it's not reported to any of the reporting agencies in the way you'd expect. So the company that's done multiple notes, by definition, the later notes are going to be at higher caps and higher fundraises. And so we estimate that this data gives you a hint at it. So how many times did you end up doing greater than $3 million seed rounds? I promise you most of the greater than $3 million seed rounds were because there were multiple conversions of notes along the way. And so this is the data that we're sitting there saying it must be the case that this number is increasing, not just because the initial financing was bigger, but because the subsequent rounds that did conversions into whatever the roll-up was that was reported as the seed got bigger and bigger. And so if you're thinking about it from a GP or LP perspective, potentially you're going to be able to put more money to work by investing in the post-seed part of the round than in the actual first part of the institutional seed. And oh, by the way, it's probably much less competitive to get into the post-seed part of the company than in the first institutional close. OK, so what are your options? You're the CEO, and you've raised your seed, but you're not ready for A. Well, you can do a bridge. That's where you call up your insiders. And you better be sure that the bridge goes somewhere. But as you'll find, many of the institutional seed investors essentially aren't in the business of bridging companies. So 9 times out of 10, this is a bad option. Number 2, I want to go de-risk the deal. Well, I can go straight to an A. And we see plenty of companies that can go right to an A. But the CEO doesn't like the price he or she can get right now. Oh, if I get 2 or 3 more quarters of sales growth, guess what my price is going to look like? Oh, if I go from 1 million run rate to a 3 million run rate this year versus next year, wow, I can really change the valuation at which the bid comes in. So therefore, we ask, are you confident of your milestones? If you can comfortably hit your next 2 or 3 quarters of your milestones, why would you take your A prematurely? Do a top-off post-seed round before you go to the A. You know what's going to happen? You're going to skip the A and go right to the B price. And to some extent, that's the business that Bullpen is in. Give them the last money in the deal so they can skip the A round and go right to the B round. They'll still call it an A round. And then we also get questions about, well, what if you're doing different things that stay outside of the model? So for example, we occasionally have hardware companies come in and they go, well, how do I get this thing financed? Well, go to Kickstarter. You go to Kickstarter not just to get the money, but you can actually validate that people will buy the product by the sign-up rate. Now you've actually, to some extent, got a letter of your terms of interest to be able to essentially go out to the next round. OK. So here's my 3 takeaways from the 3 audience sectors that I imagine are out here right now. So if you're a CEO, and I say this much to the chagrin of many CEOs who hear this advice, the best thing to do is to always be raising money in the background instead of periodically doing it in the foreground. You hear a lot of CEOs say, oh, I hate raising money. It's such a time-consuming thing. I think that's the wrong way to be thinking about raising money now. It should be this lightweight background effort, kind of what Kate was just talking about. 92 days to raise the money, but 3 years old relationships was the newest LP who came in the fund. That's what the CEO needs to be doing. Oh, let me do an update meeting over here. Let me go talk to this angel. Let me go keep this fund up to, oh, hey, it's time to do a $500,000 note. Who's in? And we're seeing that the best CEOs are actually playing this game as a continuous process where they're doing a little bit all the time. And that also means that the time sink of the, I'm going to now go raise money for 3 months, that also goes away because you've to some extent amortized that high order process over the course of a year instead of actually doing it all at once. And again, I think most people are uncomfortable with this right now, but there's a massive overlay to playing the game this way in terms of the preservation of ownership of the company for the CEO if you do it this way as opposed to the discrete event. Now, if you're an investor, there's a potentially big downside to this. You could always be the greater fool at the auction, right? CEOs game the system, hit the milestone. Now he's going to come talk to me because, oh, all the milestones are hit. Well, you better be someone that CEO wants to talk to a priori because you're a value added and you're going to help them hit their next milestone. The way you can assure yourself deal flow is you hang up a shingle and go, I can help you hit the next 2 quarters of sales growth. That's when that entrepreneur is going to come seek you out because you have value added guidance. And the last and potentially most burn me at the cross statement I could make after listening to the LP panel in the morning. Did you notice how nobody on the LP panel this morning talked about how picking companies is part of the process of being in venture? Seems like the strangest thing to me. Oh, tell me about your sourcing methodology. Tell me who you know. Tell me how you got into business. Well, actually, at some point, if seed is a process, you're going to get to bite on almost everything because these rounds are heavily syndicated over multiple rounds. So the idea that you're not going to see the deals, that is absolutely not the case in especially the post-seed part of it. You're going to see, to some extent, all of the deals as they're looking for a couple extra dollars before the big round. So you know it's going to be a premium if you're an LP. Ask the GP how good are they at actually picking the winners from the list. We've now been in business at Bullpen for 4 years, and I can't look back in 4 years and go, God, I wish I saw that. In 4 years, I can say, God, I wish I saw that deal. I cannot say that in the 4 years I've run the fund. But I can say, God, I picked wrong on this one because I thought through the way that the business would proceed the wrong way. And hopefully at some point, the LP community gets wise to this, that it's time to figure out who the good pickers are as opposed to just who has deal flow. The deal flow is there for anyone who's actually a value-added investor per point too. Okay, and I think that's my last slide, but I will give my one final comment before I guess I have 2 or 3 minutes. I can take a question or two. You know, Dave was nice enough to have us be sponsors of this event. We're going to be doing the first ever post-seed conference November the 18th. Go to postseed.co. A bunch of our friends who are also post-seed investors are going to be sponsoring with us. The guys at Venture 51, Paul Lee from Lightbank, who's here. And we're going to basically have a whole conference about what the implications of this post-seed world are for LPs, GPs, and entrepreneurs. So I hope I can see some of you there. And with that, I think I got 2, 3 minutes for some questions. Anybody? Anybody? Oh, it was that compelling. There we go. Awesome. Awesome. Venture debt is is an awesome instrument in the post-seed world because it basically allows you to get anywhere between 50 cents to $1 of leverage on every dollar you put in. So let's say you need $2 million to be able to hit your next milestone. You can come to Bullpen and we can syndicate 500 grand from us, 500 grand from your insiders. We can go call up WTI and get another $1 million. The next thing you know, you did this very simple process. You ended up with $2 million in the bank, and you only need $1.2 million to go hit your next milestone. And it was your insiders, one new lead, and a firm like a WTI SVB coming in. Boy, it's great for us. I would say of the 34 deals that we did in Fund 1, venture debt was a part of the puzzle 25 times at least. And we're also seeing the venture debt companies actually take equity positions sometimes in these smaller rounds because the slug size is such that they can do a hybrid model. So $1 million raise, OK, $750 from Bullpen, $250 from the WTI type entity, $1 million from the insiders, we're done. And that's really a great formula. It minimizes the total amount of time in the raise. Yes? So it turned out this was very much surprising. Again, using our Fund 1 as a proxy, being one of the first funds in this post-seed world, we had 34 deals in Fund 1, 17 enterprise, 17 consumer. And there was no design to that. We had no preference for it. We didn't decide to do one or the other. So that as our proxy has made us basically say, anybody who's in the seed game can benefit from this. And as long as we're investing in companies that have previously been invested in by the leading seed funds, we should see, I think, a pretty wide spread as opposed to, oh, this works great for SaaS, but it doesn't really work for a direct-to-consumer company. Plenty of times, a direct-to-consumer company wants to go from 1 million users to 10 million users, wants to get that next thing. The SaaS company wants to go from $1 million run rate to $1 million quarters. Doesn't matter. It's, you know, they both have a year to go get that next big milestone. Yeah, one more. Oh, wow. I should have paid him to ask that question. You know what? We didn't know it first, but we learned it. And you know what we did? We changed our website just last month. If you go to bullpencapital.com, it says there are 3 things you have to do to talk to us. 1, be post-product market fit. That's very important. This can't be, oh, I'm going to pivot the company and try the next thing. This has got to be, it's working, but it's early. Number 2, your syndicate's got to support the deal. So don't come to me with a great syndicate of soft tech and Jeff and all, and Jeff goes, nah, I'm not putting any more money in. So that's number 1, post-product market fit. Number 2, syndicate supports. And then number 3 is the most important, where we spend the most time. Do we believe that there's a near-term milestone that's going to make you go from a 8, 9, 10 post to a $40, $50 million post because you went past the point at which the traditional Series A investors are now going to put you in an auction? And that's where we spend most of our time in our pitch meetings, because we look at the operating plan for the next 12 months. And one of the things that I find refreshing about our job at Bullpen is we don't have to predict the future 5 years out. We don't need to make predictions about if hardware is going to be the next big thing. We can actually have all of the seed funds in front of us make those predictions. All we got to do is try and predict the future 12 months out. So it's a very operationally focused business model as opposed to a, oh, well, is hardware going to be the big thing in 2017? So thank you for that. And I owe you a drink for asking the question. Great. And with that, I hit X right on the time. Awesome. Thank you.